Good evening and welcome to Biz RoundUp. I'm Chavika Samarasinghe and we at our television bring you a collection of business highlights. Let's have a look at the headlines. Sri Lanka Institute of Directors stresses need for IT competence. International Monetary Fund approval stimulates growth. Nation seeks to expand exports through Africa. News in detail. The International Monetary Fund's Executive Board recently approved a lifeline for Sri Lanka. The $3 billion 4-year extended fund facility arrangement will deliver stability and stimulate growth. The IMF said the program supports Sri Lanka's economic policies and reforms. The objectives of the EFF-supported program are to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, safeguarding financial stability and stepping up structural reforms to unlock Sri Lanka's growth potential. All program measures are mindful of the need to protect the most vulnerable and improve governance. IMF said close collaboration between Sri Lanka and all its creditors will be critical to expedite a debt treatment that will restore debt stability consistent with program parameters. The International Monetary Fund recalled that Sri Lanka has been hit hard by a catastrophic economic and humanitarian crisis. The economy is facing significant challenges stemming from pre-existing vulnerabilities and economic missteps in the lead-up to the crisis, further aggravated by a series of external shocks. The EFF-supported program aims to mitigate the economic impact on the poor and vulnerable and strengthen governance and growth potential. The Executive Board's decision will enable an immediate disbursement equivalent to $333 million and catalyze financial support from other development partners. It has been reported that Sri Lanka's private creditors are considering a proposal to swap defaulted bonds with new securities. These new securities would have cash flow linked to the nation's future growth, according to people familiar with the matter. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe holds that Sri Lanka wants to start talks with private creditors as fast as possible. It has been reported that according to Standard Chartered, foreign investors are likely to raise holdings in Sri Lanka government bonds. This is based on a successful deal with the International Monetary Fund, which would unlock more funding to stabilize the nation's finances.
The bank CEO in Sri Lanka, Bingumal Devarathantri, maintains that once there is clarity on the debts and restructuring process, the interest rates will fall. According to the CEO, investors will want to time it right and get into the bonds space early. Investors are attracted to local bonds by one of the most attractive yields among emerging Asian nations. The nation grappled with soaring costs, depleted funds and severe supply shortages for much of 2022 as it pursued a loan program with the IMF after a debt default in May. Devarathantri stresses that the price points will be very different once debt restructuring is over. He highlights that current bond levels on the shorter end, mainly on treasury bills, look good to buy. Further, he maintains that the time is right to take stakes in any of the larger corporates or banks. Sri Lanka's one-year treasury bill yields about 26% compared with around 7% for two-year notes in India and 6.38% for similar maturity Indonesian bonds.
The World Bank Group is preparing its new partnership framework with Sri Lanka for 2023 to 2026. As part of the process, they have invited interested stakeholders to provide feedback through their online consultation platform.
Their online consultation platform is available in all three languages until March 29, 2023. The World Bank Group is an international financial institution with a mission to fight poverty and support inclusive growth. Sri Lanka has been a member of the World Bank since 1950. Since then, the World Bank Group has been instrumental in supporting Sri Lanka's development. Sri Lanka became a member of the International Finance Corporation in 1956. Meanwhile, ambassadors representing Asia in Sri Lanka recently met with President Ranil Wickremesinghe to discuss important and positive developments. This included substantive cooperation in all areas of mutual interest. The President highlighted the strategic importance of ASEAN to peace, development and cooperation in the region. He also recognized the positive contribution of such relations to world peace and economic development. Further, airline agencies in Sri Lanka have reduced prices of air tickets by 20% in proportion to the decrease in the price of the US dollar. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Nimal de Silva, said that these agencies have agreed to further reduce the prices of air tickets.
State Minister of Investment Promotion Dilum Amunagama has stepped up efforts to address the concerns of investors seeking approval for investment projects.
This is observed recently at the Investor Facilitation Centre with the conclusion of the second meeting of the Investor Facilitation Coordinating Committee chaired by State Minister Amunagama. During the meeting, issues faced by 4 board of investment companies operating in diverse sectors such as circuit manufacturing and seafood processing were tabled and taken into consideration. State Minister Amunagama directed the officials of pertinent aligned agencies to expedite actions to swiftly resolve the pending issues of the investors. The State Minister hopes that the meeting help enhance collaboration and synergy with investors, thereby boosting investor confidence and exploring investment opportunities. Meanwhile, investors pointed out that review meetings help appraise stakeholder projects and address investor concerns. Speaking at the meeting, Board of Investment Director General Renuka Veerakon appreciated the efforts of line agency officials and their efforts to facilitate the investors. The Investor Facilitation Centre was established to fast-track approvals with respect to investment projects. It offers investors a one-step service while imparting greater transparency in foreign direct investment proposals and removing administrative impediments. These facilitation meetings are regularly conducted to get definite timelines for resolving queries related to investment projects under the chairmanship of the Investment Promotion State Minister.
Stay tuned. We will return after this commercial break.
Businesses in this day and age require the best communication solutions to be connected anywhere and anytime. Our technologically advanced long-distance radio devices operate even in the most challenging and harsh environments, designed for dust, water, and drop resistance. The push-to-talk function is designed for convenience, ensuring clear and uninterrupted communication between multiple devices. Dynacom Engineering, a subsidiary of IWS Holdings, is a licensed service provider of the best push-to-talk long-distance wireless communication systems, approved by the TRC and the Ministry of Defense.
The Auto and Mobility Show. Fast and nimble. Even though they might not look it, Rev delves into the fascinating world of sleeper cars.
Welcome back. Great importance was given to the African continent in the presidential announcement on the 75th anniversary of independence. The President has also met with several envoys from the African region. The meeting was organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on 3rd February 2023 at the Presidential Secretariat. To coincide with the momentous occasion, Ranjiv Gunawardena, Chairman of the International Consultants, is sponsoring a major export-oriented webinar conference. This is in collaboration with the Sri Lanka Export Development Board and the Sri Lanka High Commission in Pretoria. The webinar conference, titled Gateway to Africa, will be a series of events, and the inaugural session will be deliberating on doing business in Mozambique, starting on the 28th of March 2023 at 1:30 p.m. Colombo time. The inaugural webinar conference to focus on key sectors from Sri Lanka, comprising the power and energy, civil construction, engineering services and telecommunication sectors. At the pre-launch event on the 10th of March, Ranjiv Gunawardena stated Sri Lanka has a competitive edge compared to its rivals from the Western Hemisphere. Due to the cost of labour being far less in comparison to its counterparts, the quality of work is of international standing or even better than their competitors. African countries have signed the African Union Free Trade Agreement. The African Free Trade Agreement comprises 3 protocols which pertain to trade in goods, trade in services, rules, and procedures on the settlement of disputes. The deal creates a continent-wide market embracing 54 countries with 1.3 billion rupees and a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion US dollars. In time to come, It will create a single market similar to the internal market of the European Union, where goods and services can be imported and exported without any tariffs, plus duty-free. Under the African Union Free Trade Agreement, manufactured goods and services will not incur duties and tariffs. When goods are transported from one African country to another, for instance by air, sea or overland, there are no customs duties that are to be paid. This is a great opportunity for some of the companies in Sri Lanka to take full advantage of exporting the goods and services. Another crucial component is that the majority of African countries are deemed as least developed economies under the UN description. These are eligible for trade preferences, development financing, including official development assistance, debt relief, technical assistance and other forms of support, which means that they have free access to the European and American market duty-free. Thus, Sri Lankan companies could even manufacture goods in the African continent, creating 3 accessible markets. The African Free Trade Agreement areas can be a tremendous opportunity. In the African context, there is funding for all sorts of projects. The European Union has pledged 150 billion euros for investment in Africa as it seeks to gain influence on the continent and become its partner of choice. America has pledged $55 billion in economic, health and security support for Africa over the next 3 years. International consultants can access this type of funding for projects in the African continent. This event will provide a great opportunity for Sri Lankan companies and corporations to look at the alternative African market. This is a way Sri Lanka can export itself out of the current economic crisis which has beset the island. The first ever Sri Lanka survey report on board IT governance was recently launched by Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. It was received by an audience of over 100 board directors from top corporates at the Cinnamon Lakeside Hotel.
SLID Chairman Faisal Sal in his opening remarks said that IT governance is an integral part of overall enterprise governance and proper IT governance is now a significant board-level responsibility. The Sri Lanka Institute of Directors collaborated on this study with Ernst & Young, Sri Lanka as its main technical partner. The organizations were assisted by a team of high-profile IT governance experts from 3 foreign universities and Ernst & Young Global Delivery Services. The survey was designed, conducted and analysed under the guidance of professors from the Memorial University, Canada, the University of Waterloo, Canada and the Jindal Global Business School, India. SLID received assistance from the Ministry of Finance, the Colombo Stock Exchange, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and the National Chamber of Commerce of Sri Lanka to conduct the survey. This was conducted amongst company directors across several industries in the private and public sectors. The study focused on the current state of board-level IT governance expertise and practices across public and private sector companies. Outcomes were aligned to the context of increasing technological challenges and disruptions companies face in their operating business environments.
Ernst & Young Sri Lanka partner Arjuna Herap recapped the key findings and outcomes of the study. He shared an overview of board governance and its link to IT governance and the need for both for success of corporates today.
Ernst & Young Sri Lanka partner Arjuna Herap emphasized that as the board's IT expertise increases, it facilitates a better board IT governance and in turn better return on investment. Partner Herat made a compelling presentation emphasizing the need for adequate and appropriate IT knowledge, experience and expertise within boards of directors. This knowledge will support operations in a technologically driven internal and external environment in line with survey findings. It was advocated that for boards to carry out their duties responsibly and accurately in today's market, they must know about IT, its risks, its impact on strategy, and the related privacy and security issues. Some insightful findings from the diagnostic study were that IT governance at the board level was significantly less effective than overall board governance. It was revealed that there were distinct stages in the IT governance maturity curve, and the best in class knew what to do and were doing it. It was shown that public sector boards were distinctly different in composition, and IT governance practices were generally lacking compared to private sector boards. The recommendations included identifying the right fit IT strategy to be implemented depending on the industry the business operates within. Having at least 2 to 3 board members with sufficient IT competency skills if there is no IT advisory committee is recommended.
Stay tuned. We will return after this commercial break.
State of Business, sponsored by
IWS Aviation.
Welcome back. More than 1 million Sri Lankan paddy farmers in all 25 districts will get vital assistance through a shipment of 36,000 metric tons of fertilizer. The fertilizer was recently handed over by the United States to the Ministry of Agriculture.
The shipment of the triple superphosphate TSP was funded by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and procured by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, for distribution free of charge to farmers. The second shipment of USAID support fertilizers delivered on a promise USAID Administrator Samantha Power made last September in response to Sri Lanka's food security challenges. It brings the total of USAID-supported TSP and urea fertilizer to more than 45,000 metric tons over the last year. The United States, through USAID, provided $46 million in funding to procure essential fertilizer, providing much-needed nutrients to paddy crops, helping increase paddy production and averting a food crisis. This funding also provided cash assistance to smallholder farmers who were affected by low yields over the past few agricultural seasons and on account of the prevailing economic crisis. The program is being implemented by UNFAO with oversight provisions to ensure transparency and accountability. Speaking at the handover, Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaravira expresses gratitude to the people of America and FAO for providing timely support to reinvigorate the local agricultural sector. In the last year, the United States provided more than $270 million in new support to Sri Lankans amid the ongoing economic crisis.
Direct exposures to the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank among the Fitch Ratings portfolio of rated banks in Asia Pacific appear limited, according to Fitch. Weaknesses that contributed to the failure of the two banks are among the factors already considered in Fitch Ratings assessment for Asia Pacific banks.
These weaknesses are often offset by structural factors such as regulation, and Fitch expects that authorities would provide liquidity support if needed. The quality and persistence of deposits is an important credit consideration for bank credit ratings. This applies particularly when liquidity is tightening sharply and when unrealized valuation losses on asset holdings could be realized if a deposit run forced banks to sell assets. Few Fitch-rated banks in Asia-Pacific have the sort of depositor concentration profiles that left Silicon Valley Bank particularly vulnerable to a run. Fitch believes that risk of deposit volatility could be significant for digital banks in the region. However, the ratings of the two digital banks in Fitch's Asia-Pacific portfolio are driven by expectations that parent entities would provide extraordinary support if needed, mitigating this risk. Fitch generally views securities portfolio valuation risks as manageable for Asia-Pacific banks, although exposures tend to be greatest in India and Japan. In addition to market-specific structural factors, this partly reflects the fact that interest rate increases over 2022 were smaller than those in the US for most Asia-Pacific markets, a pattern that we expect to be sustained in 2023. Notably, while Fitch expects the Bank of Japan's yield cap to be raised by 50 basis points later this year, Fitch does not see a sharp rise in Japanese government bond yields.
Fitch highlights that regulators in the region also emphasize strong interest rate risk management. This is led by Australia, which levies minimum requirement for non-traded interest rate risk.
Many developed markets incorporate the minimum basal liquidity rules, which smaller US banks are not subject to. In line with this, Japanese banks have been reducing securities investments and duration, and some banks in Taiwan have raised capital to restore Common Equity Tier 1 capital ratios after interest rate-related valuation losses. Fitch believes risks from valuation losses are offset by the likelihood that the authorities will provide liquidity support to banks if needed. Support from smaller banks may be more variable. For example, Fitch assumes New Zealand's more non-bank deposit takes would not have access to central banks' lender of last resort facilities. Ultimately, the creditworthiness of many Fitch-rated banks in Asia-Pacific is heavily influenced by prospects for extraordinary sovereign support. Fitch's base case is that recent developments in the US will not cause major shifts in US monetary policy. If they do result in lower peak US rates or earlier US rates cuts than Fitch expects, this could cause monetary policy in some Asia-Pacific markets to be looser than under Fitch's baseline. Fitch believes this would be credit negative for Asia-Pacific banks as the effect on net interest earnings would outweigh that on securities valuations. The direct exposures among Fitch-rated banks in Asia-Pacific to Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank are not material to credit profiles. Some Japanese banks and their clients also have limited indirect exposures, but these would not be significant for the bank's credit profiles.
It has been reported that researchers have created a superconducting material that works at both a temperature and pressure low enough for actual use in practical situations.
It reaches a breakthrough that scientists have been chasing for more than a century in making a material that is able to transmit electricity without resistance and pass magnetic fields around the material. This discovery could lead to power grids that are able to seamlessly transmit energy, saving up to 200 million megawatt hours that is currently lost to resistance. It could also contribute to nuclear fusion, a long-awaited process that could create unlimited power. Other applications include high-speed, hovering trains and new kinds of medical equipment, they suggest. A team led by the same scientist, Professor Ranga Dias, previously reported the creation of two slightly less breakthrough but similarly superconducting materials in papers. These papers were published in Nature and Physical Review letters. The Nature paper was eventually retracted by the journal's editors amid questions over the scientists' approach. This time around, Professor Dias and his team say they took extra steps to avoid similar criticism. The scientists looked to validate the old paper with new data collected outside of a lab, with a team of scientists voting as it happened live, and undertook a similar process for the new research. Professor Dias and the team made the material by taking a rare earth metal named lutetium and mixed it with hydrogen and a small part of nitrogen.
With that, we wind up for today. For this and more, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Facebook. See you tomorrow with the State of Business at 7:45 p.m. Take care and good night.